Great. Well, welcome again to our second round of the Family Life in Lockdown webinars. It's fantastic to be back. I'm going to hand over straight to Kath, who's going to be facilitating, and Leon will be facilitating as well parts of the session today. It's fantastic to be back. So over to you, Kath.
Thanks, Claire. Well, I wonder how we've all survived this past week. Last week, if you were with us, we touched on creating routines. I'm wondering if you have noticed or set up any little routines that your household could be a part of. Actually listening to a few podcasts this week about just how important these routines are and how by including our kids in the creation of these, it can actually help our day enormously on a lot of levels. But tonight we are looking at the stresses and the anxiety that this time is producing. It's so normal to feel these and for our kids to feel them too. And we're going to look at how these can actually be good times to be real with our kids and have some of the hard conversations and really connect with our kids in this crucial time. So we're going to hear from our panel of beautiful people who are from around Reading. And if you need to refer back to who they are, you can go back to last week's recording just to hear who they are. But we've asked them if or when or how anxieties are playing out in their households. So let's go with Andrea first, shall we?
Well, I've been thinking a little bit about this week, and I clocked myself getting more anxious through last week into the weekend, just because we know the lockdown might be easing a little. So I've been just getting a little bit anxious about what that might mean, because it's uncertain, isn't it? And I think uncertainty is a big thing with anxiety. And I asked my older two kids, they're 10 and 12, what they're worried about. And it was two totally different things. So my 10-year-old said he was worried about getting the virus, and he does think about it and wonder what would happen if he caught it. And he said he worries when we go out for a walk and he sees people near him. And my 12-year-old said she's most worried about her schoolwork and doing it right and missing stuff and not handing it in or getting it all wrong and that kind of thing. So she's not worried about the virus at all, she said. So and how it plays out in our house, we all tend to get irritable to angry, somewhere along that continuum. Irritable, very angry with each other, and making a mountain out of a molehill over little things will get frustrated and irritated. So yeah, that's my contribution.
Thanks for that, Andrea, that's great. Innocent, how about for you?
For me, as I mentioned last week, I think for me I had some obvious issues of anxiety, more relating to the fact that I had the virus quite early on during lockdown, and secondly because of all the influx of news and reports about the virus and how it was spreading. I think it was just feeding into my psyche. So quite early on I stopped watching the news, stopped listening to radios, and I found that my anxiety has actually got a lot better. Now, that wasn't the main reason. I think my main reason was God was intervened in a way that only he could, really, because I've been really pressing in prayer and trying to choose my focus of focusing more on the word than on the world, really. So the world's got so much to say and the narrative is so dark and so heavy and we have no control over that, but I can control what I focus on, and I'm just not going to focus in that at the moment. In my household, it's myself and my 10-year-old daughter. She hasn't really expressed anxiety so much over the virus, I think namely because we don't watch very much news or anything really related to that. But I think, like Andrea, we have issues where something really small will turn into a massive deal just in the click of a second. So we often have family meetings, which we find we're having a lot more lately. Probably have 1 or 2 a week at this point, and we just sit down and I kind of say what's bothering me and why it's bothering me, and likewise I hand over the mic and let her express what's bothering her and why. And we try and meet somewhere in the middle, and that's kind of how we're dealing with anxiety at the moment.
That's great, thank you. And we'll come back to that because that notion of family meetings is a really good one. What about Ellie and Richard?
So for me, I feel like quite a lot of the anxieties have kind of settled a bit more as time's gone on. But at the start, I kind of live with sort of a lot of tension in my kind of neck and shoulders, which is ongoing. But I noticed it really increased, and that's kind of where I hold attention if I'm worried about other people or worried about things around me. So I found that really got a lot worse, and just kind of trying to take notice of what my body was telling me, and a lot of the things that I'd used to help mitigate it, like swimming and Pilates, like that all stopped. So then I had to find a different way through. But initially, it really affected my mood quite a lot, and I worried quite a lot about my mum because she's in the 70 and over bracket.
Yeah.
And just trying to figure out how to relate to her, like how to make it meaningful. And it was like Mother's Day and all that stuff. So I think, that's how it sort of looked for me. In terms of the kids, because ours are 2 and 4, they're still like reasonably sheltered from the wider world. But I think my 4-year-old and I have had quite a lot of chats around kind of death and illness and stuff, and she asked a lot of questions, and especially around Easter it was kind of a theme because we'd looked at the crucifixion and the resurrection of Jesus, but I think because of the wider kind of conversation about this illness being around, I think it's played in her thoughts a lot. So we've just tried to have open conversations about it, but it doesn't seem to be something that worries her in a sort of day in, day out way. Yeah.
Do you, Richard?
Yeah, I'm generally of a quite sunny temperament, so I probably need to be more anxious than I am. I need to take things seriously in a way that I don't.
It's a good thing.
So I mean, my anxieties have more been kind of related to making sure I get all my various hats and responsibilities done. Because I think, as I said last week, it's just kind of knowing where the lay of the land is and who's expecting what from me and how much and when. So I think that's been my main anxiety, as it were, but relatively speaking, pretty minimal. But yeah.
Just reminding people that Richard is a teacher and is still teaching, so just in case you'd forgotten that.
Correct.
Indeed. What about for Helen?
So I think my sort of personal anxieties are more about just meeting the needs of everybody in the household. There's 6 of us, and it's just trying to, I kind of worry about everybody being okay and take it to be my responsibility to make sure that everybody is okay. But I mean, that's not major, but that's kind of the main day-to-day thing. With my teenagers, one of them doesn't really express anxieties well, or isn't really able to, so tends to shut down. So I think if he kind of shuts down, then I know that something's up.
Yeah.
And the general mood of irritability and things is a bit of a sign for everybody.
Yeah.
And my other teenager kind of hides away if life's getting too much. So that's kind of what it looks like.
All right, that's really helpful. Thanks for sharing that, Helen. I'm going to keep Sarah for last because we need a little introduction with Sarah. But Leon, do you want to share a little bit about your world?
Yeah, our anxieties and things. We're similar to Ella and Richard in a way that our children are 4 and 7, so they're not got obvious ways of showing their stress and worry about the wider world and whatever. So I think that's fine. For us too. So me and my wife. I mean, I think it shows in well, I suppose things like the little bickering things. You know, we're if we're on edge a little bit, it's. And because there's just effectively just the 4 of us and 2 of us as adults, some of our, not major arguments, but the little arguments, they've got nowhere to go because we're all locked in, and I think some of it is actually manifesting the anxiety. Really, we're worried. We're not quite sure what we're worried about really, but it comes across in
interesting.
Being a little bit frustrated with each other. So we had to watch that a little bit, I think.
Yeah.
And I suppose the other thing I was just sort of saying is I'm quite a and analysis and graphs and all of that stuff, and I don't necessarily worry about it, but I'll then share it with Mary. Have you seen this? Have you seen that? And that isn't helpful to her. So,
Amen.
Yeah. So it's, my coping mechanism of being a bit worried is get some facts and details and drill into some apparent science, and that doesn't help Mary apparently. So
Okay, well, thanks, Leon. It's well spotted that you both work differently in that way. And now I want to introduce you to Sarah, who wasn't with us last week. But Sarah, if you want to quickly introduce yourself and the age of your children or whoever's in your household, that would be really good.
Yeah, so I'm Sarah, and in my household is me and my husband. My husband is still working. He's a builder. We have our own small business, so it's important that carries on. And we have a 4-year-old who's in reception at school, and a 3-year-old and a 1-year-old. So there's 5 of us.
So busy life in your household.
Yeah.
And your stresses and anxiety and how they play out?
Yeah, so I think early on I was worried quite a bit, and like innocent, I found that the news and stuff wasn't helpful to me. I cut it down to once a day, and now, to be honest, it's every few days. That's really helped because I have asthma, but it's not severe. But I was finding, I was looking, what are the signs that how it's going to hit me, and I was just like, this isn't helpful. So that really helped. And the other thing for us is anxiety around money, finances, because we are a small business, and if work does dry up, actually the government help won't cover our living expenses, so that's quite a source of worry. But like Innocent, I found praying really helpful. And last month, for example, we did find that we had some gifts come in that helped us to be able to pay our rent and things, so that was really encouraging. Yeah, that's great. Thank you, Sarah. That's really helpful. Right, well, thank you to everybody. I want to invite you, anyone who's listening, if you would like to share some of your anxieties that are happening, if you can pop them either in the chat or the question and answers, then that would be really good, and we'll come to them a little bit later and read some of them and share some of them. Can't guarantee we'll get to all of them, but it would be good to do that. A word that keeps coming up as I listen to people talking, particularly over this last week, has been the word connection. And this connection is actually part of our tagline for our families course. It's connection, nurture, growth. I'm guessing in this time of anxiety and stress that connection is actually key to our households. But I guess it's really hard to think of this time as being a great time to connect with our household, given that we'd probably catch ourselves thinking a few times, I wish they would all just go away. But connection is actually a very big part of who we are as a family. And this provides a time at this time for us to do something a little bit unique. But firstly, what I want to do is quickly look at the stress and anxieties within ourselves, and these stresses that we're dealing with, that a lot of our panel have already mentioned. And I just want to say that it's okay at this time not to feel okay. It is okay not to feel okay at this time, because it is hard, and we just want to give permission for people to feel not okay. I was talking to a friend just the other day, and her way of dealing with this not being okay, it was just literally to go and get in the car, get a cup of tea, and she got a chocolate brownie, and she just went and sat in the car for 5 minutes. And she just needed that time out. I think for us, all of us, with our kids and with our spouses or with anybody who's living in the household, we need to identify ways in which we can have a break. And even if it is just for 5 minutes, or if it's a treat and we can go and do half an hour in a bath, or however that might look. Because it is amazing how our kids are incredibly good at picking up our own stresses.
whether we're showing it in our words and how we're relating to them or to our spouses or to anybody in the household, or whether it's in our body language. And Ellie, mentioned the fact that she holds it here. Well, our body language just tells so much of the anxieties that we're going through, and our kids pick that up so quickly. So looking after ourselves is so vital in this time. But let's now quickly talk about our kids and the things that they're stressful and worried about at the moment. And a few of them were mentioned. And my guess is that there are lots of worries happening in their little heads, or big heads, depending on how old they are. But and the worries would, as already has been mentioned by some of the panel, they go from whether or not they're going to get this virus, or whether it's a work, they're not going to get through all their work for school. Or I was speaking to a mum the other day, and she was saying that their child was very nervous of the masks that people are wearing, and it makes them look really, it's a different look for people to get used to. Or whether our kids are listening to news or seeing things on social media. But the first thing we need to do when our kids are struggling with all these things is to listen and connect. And in our course, we actually teach, whenever there's a problem, listen. And it's just such a beautiful way to connect with our kids. And you may not have thought about it, but actually I want to share just three briefly, because our time is quite short. But I just want to share three of our listening skills that we have. I've picked three of the many that we do have, but they're three do's, so it's quite positive. So the first one is, do give our kids space to talk. And we sometimes need to be patient for that to happen. But lots of conflict and or anxiety shows in the behaviours that we're seeing in our kids. And not that in the moment is the time to be doing this, but actually after the event, being able to take them aside and just go, so I noticed that you're feeling, or that you're annoying your sister, or however that might play out, but just give them space to talk and be patient and wait for them to be able to share some of this stuff, because it's amazing. Number two is, do accept and validate their feelings. Oh, I can understand you feel that way. That must be really hard. Oh, I can see that you're really angry. I can see that you're really nervous, or you're really scared. Just being able to see it and validate and go, that's okay. And being able to stop there, not trying to fix it, but just allowing them to know that we've seen them. And the third one is, do be curious about their world. Do show interest. Say that wonderful thing, I wonder what it would be like to, or I wonder what you could do about that. And we work with them to come up with some of the ways forward. And they own their own ways forward, which is incredibly beautiful to watch. So that's, do give them space to talk, be patient. And number two is to do accept and validate their feelings. Let them know that it's okay that they feel that way, and not to try and fix it, but just go, I see that you're feeling that way. And number three is, do be curious about their world and show interest, and work together with them in order for them to find a way forward. And it takes courage to have these hard conversations, but very, very needed at this time. And actually, it allows us to connect on a new level. So watch out for that word connection, because connection leads to growth in our family relations. And you might even find it leads to a bit more peace. But I want to just pop back to our panel now and ask anybody really how any of those listening skills or any opportunities that you've been able to. I remember last time we talked about some of you going on walks, and it's in those peaceful times that listening actually is a real skill. Wondering if any of you guys, just throw a hand up, want to share anything that you've experienced in helping our kids deal with this time.
Yeah, I took up the idea of the walk. We've got a little dog, and a little one is he doesn't very keen on walks, but our 7-year-old does. And so a couple of times this week we've gone on a you know, that was it, 20-minute walk, half an hour walk, and it's a bit of quality time, and I think she was just chatting about, I don't know, it wasn't like tell us all your worries type thing, obviously. Well, so obviously we didn't do that, but yeah, it just felt quality time. It felt like she had the opportunity to talk about things, and if there was a worry, there would have been that chance to. So I just thought, oh wow, that's is it Andrea? Did you do that? Anyway, whoever did that, thank you, because that's little points in our week which could be listening, or you know, can be. And it's quite easy to make it intentional to actually ask a question. So, you know, what, you know, it could be, you know, what's worrying you, or what's on your mind.
That's great. I love the little phrase, I noticed that you.
Yeah.
I noticed that you, and it's just, it can lead to, I mean, it can be applied to anything, but it just is an opener. So yeah, thanks for that, Leon. That's great. Yeah, Ellie.
I think something I've noticed makes a discernible difference is giving them my full attention. This draws out a lot more from them than if I'm sort of caught between two tasks, or you know, keeping one eye on them and one eye on something else. So I noticed that the kind of quality of communication and insight into their world is like tripled when I stop whatever it is I'm doing and just properly focus and make eye contact, get down to their level.
Beautiful.
I don't always do it consistently. You still feel tugged in lots of directions, but I think something my daughter really likes to do is she loves for us to tell her made up stories, and we just go into the garden and have a bit of downtime, sit on a chair, and you know, if I run out of steam to tell a story, then we can kind of just talk about whatever she wants to talk about, but it feels a bit like I'm not distracted by the things that need to be done in the house. Yeah,
that's a really lovely point. Thanks, Ellie. That's great. What about for others? In a minute, we'll go to the questions. But if anybody else wants to, Andrea.
Yeah, I've just noticed with my youngest, who's 6, there's often quite a lot of time lag between him being irritated or angry or obviously concerned about something, and then it won't be until hours or maybe even days afterwards that actually we get to the bottom of what it was that was causing all that. And often, you know, if you see an issue, you want to fix it straight away and have that heart to heart, or, you know, let's just get to the bottom of this and sort it and solve it. And it doesn't work like that. You almost just need to leave it for a bit and go back to it hours later and remember to. I often forget, and it just bubbles on. And
no, that's a beautiful point. Well done. Yeah, indeed. Thanks, Andrea. Innocent.
Yeah, I think I agree with Andrea that there seems to be a best time for when these anxieties come to the surface. Like me and my daughter can bubble through the door quite the day, talking about any and everything quite fine, and then it's just in the evening, not often before bath time and bedtime, that everything will come to the surface. Every worry and anxiety will come, and you can probably time it down to the minute. I'm like, okay, it's that time. I can see the look, and she's like, this has happened and that's happened, and I don't like this, and this is making me really sad. So instead of trying to rush bedtime along, I try and create a small time or space to hear those worries and concerns. And as you say, acknowledge them and say, okay, Mummy can't solve that, but thank you for sharing that with me. Maybe we can talk more about that tomorrow and see how we can resolve that.
Beautiful.
But just allowing her to get it off her chest, so she's not going to bed with a heavy head or a heavy heart, and then we move on. 9 out of 10 times in the morning she's forgotten about it.
That's
and then it'll pop up again at bedtime, and then there's a million things on the list again. I'm like, okay, it's that time.
Oh, that's fantastic. Yeah. Thanks, Innocent. That's really good. Right. Unless somebody else wants to jump in there, I'm going to ask Leon just to take us on a little journey through some of
the cat wants to say something. No. Yeah. Well, thanks for a couple of people who have popped some or shared some thoughts about their anxieties. Let me read the first one. I had lots of anxieties about returning to work, and my girls are both worried about the future, either returning to school, college, what it actually might look like. I think we thought about this a lot with the panel as well, didn't we? Some of us have got children of an age where school issues are more more pressing. But then also actually about our own personal work world, and what does it look like for us, me, post this lockdown. I don't know if that's something you're thinking about as well. So panelists, anything about there? So I mean, should we go let's go to the one we haven't thought about first, that the our own personal worries about returning to normal life, whatever that is. Is that something which is playing on your mind, and how are you dealing with that?
Interesting.
Yeah, I
Go
think
ahead.
that's definitely something that's playing on my mind. I mean, I think we've heard quite recently that they're thinking about opening up primary schools first, and that definitely gives me some anxiety. I mean, it hasn't taken over, but I can't see how that can happen as things are. And I'd be really reluctant to allow my daughter to just go back to school if there isn't some kind of, without a vaccine really, I can't see how they're going to be able to maintain social distancing in that kind of setting. So that definitely gives me concerns. And even returning to work, I think when we're out and about, I find that my daughter's completely oblivious in this kind of in and out, like weaving along the road on her scooter as normal. But for me, I'm kind of like, stop, we've got to keep a distance. And I can see that in the classroom, they're going to have the same issue. It's just not going to, I can't understand how that's going to play out really. So in a similar fashion, I have those anxieties too. My only way of dealing with it at the moment is just committing it to prayer really, and knowing that God will make a way.
To say the context for that question asked was actually from a primary school teacher. So
interesting.
So the work is related to the children, isn't it?
Yeah.
Richard, have you got anything that you can add to that, being in the school?
I guess we've all got our question marks about how it's going to look. I think a lot of, whilst obviously children are in the least vulnerable category virus-wise, nevertheless, children come from many different kinds of households, and if there are older people in the households or with underlying health issues, then even though the schools are open, whether anyone from that household will want to go back for fear of bringing something back to the house which will compromise the health of the elderly relative, for example, is a genuine issue. So at the moment we're trying to plan for about 5 different possible scenarios, and then the government will say which one it is, and then we'll plug for that one. So we're a bit in limbo land really at the moment, and then we'll probably scramble as the official guidance comes down. So sorry, I can't say any more than that really.
No, that's really helpful. Yeah. I don't think there's really much we can do until, I mean, like so much of this time, it is out of our control at the moment. And I feel that, again, it's about keeping the conversations going with partners, with friends, and just giving yourself space to not be okay with it, but just being able to communicate it. Yeah.
There's a little bit that, I mean, it just strikes me. I mean, as I said earlier, I mean, I like trying to solve things. I can't solve this. I mean, it's like, what does my opinions really alter things? I mean, it keeps you sane in one sense, but maybe sometimes there is that, you've got to relax in the sense of that serenity thing. You know, like, I can't change this. So, tell yourself not to stress about what you can't change. And then what is before us, make the decision on what we have to do in the moment. So easy to say, isn't it? But it's another question. Sorry, Helen.
No, I was just going to say, I think one thing, I mean, as you say, there's no answers, and we don't know about schools yet, and we don't know about going back to work, so there's no way of addressing that. So I just think it's that one day at a time. You know, we don't know what's going to happen. We don't know what they're going to say on Sunday. We don't know what they're going to say in a month's time. So we just have to try and keep our eyes on today.
I like that. I really like that, Helen. Thank you. Yeah, it's a really, really great point. And being in the moment, very much so. I'm looking at the time and seeing that we are out of time. But I wonder if there is something that in all our conversations has inspired you tonight. something that you thought, oh, actually, I could give that a go. Well, it would be great to give it a go and hear how it went. And can we encourage you to ponder the notion of connection this week, and see if you can create opportunities to connect through listening, and even brave the difficult conversations by starting with some of the listening skills that I gave you just a moment ago. And remember to look after yourself in this too. Take the time that you need to have time out. I think Claire's got a little drawing that I want to throw up there for the last little.
Yes, I do.
Yes,
I do.
I just thought it was a really lovely little thing to finish on. And it says, sometimes I don't feel very brave, said the boy. That was brave of you to say, said the horse. And I just think, it's a brave thing to step into some of these conversations about anxieties and what for. But Claire, thank you for that. And I'm going to, let you know that next week we're going to be back here again, and really look forward to hearing if anybody has had some successes with some of those listening skills. We're hoping to also talk about what it looks like to be when conflict arises in your household, whether that be conflict with your partners or conflict with your kids or all of it. But we look forward to being able to share that with you next week.
Thank you for watching this video. Why don't you join us in building a life-giving, hope-filled culture by building each other up, helping each other grow, because quite simply, every single person, without exception, is of infinite value and worth. So don't forget to subscribe and click like on YouTube, to follow us on Facebook, and do leave your comments below as well. We'd love to hear from you. Thanks again for watching. We'll see you around. Bye.